everybody. It says it's waiting. I think it will go. Wait a second. I might have selected the wrong one on Restream. Or, oh wait, there we go. Okay, cool. We're live. Hello, everybody.
I lost you.
You lost me? I see you.
No, I can't hear you. It's
Hello.
on my side. You sure?
No. Hold on. Check. Test. Can everybody hear me? Hello. It might be your side. I think it is you. Maybe. I think it's you. Can everybody hear me? Hello. Check. Check. Hello. Check. Check. Test. Check. If you can hear, no. Check. I'm not sure what's going on, everybody. I don't know if you can hear him or not. Let me see. Check. No, I don't think you can. Okay. We'll see. Okay. So that I can, sorry everybody for that back. No, I can't hear you. Yeah. We're working on that, Johnny. We're working on that. I can't hear him either. He can't hear me. Oh, I hear you.
Test.
I hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think it was some interaction between...
I'm Chris from Play Comics, a show where we look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that comic book source material. A part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and the opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other wonderfully geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to episode 301 of Better Podcasting. On this show, we continue our podcast media host discussion talking about Acast. It's about time, a lot of you say.
But first, in this week's Better Ponderings, topics include PowerPress's malware response, Matthew Passey's new podcast beacon, and what's going on over there in StreamYard.
And finally, in this week's Better Podback, we talk about your comments about us turning 300.
Lauren, start the show now.
This is Better Podcasting. We are hobby podcasters through and through, just like you. That's why we are different. We minimize the money talk so that you can focus on building a better podcast.
This is episode 301 of Better Podcasting. I am Steven, and I am pleased to say SP is here. I thought he was going to leave after 300.
I did leave, and I came back. I literally left the state, and I drove back.
Well, if you are still with us, thank you for continuing on. We are very happy for you to keep yourself here and keep our sanity, because if it was just SP and I talking, we would be very insane by now.
Some say we already are.
For sure. Hey, guess what? If you want to check us out next week, you can't unless you listen to a past episode, because we will be away again next week. We mentioned that before. Then after that, we should be 2 weeks in a row in theory, which will be the final 2 episodes of this season, and then we will be off in August. So if you didn't catch that last week, that's the current slated recording schedule. And let's be honest here, we got to get this media host thing done.
We're basically into overtime. We did not plan to go this long. This is supposed to be vacation for us. We're coming to you because we want to do this right for you. Matter of fact, this week, like I said before in the cold opening, we are doing this for you.
Shall we cast from the A?
I think we should better ponderings first.
Oh, fine. I guess we could call this segment the A cast, EH cast, because I'm going to start with the first better pondering that we have.
I think you should. As a matter of fact, this was huge in our Discord server, and I don't think it got as big of a play as it really deserved, either in the media or in social media.
Right there with you, because the first thing we want to talk about this week is something that actually Suncast in our Discord first brought to our attention, and it was an issue with PowerPress. And the summary is that it was compromised, and that there was malware that was basically injected, and it was not a good situation. And so what happened was it was last weekish. It was actually basically the day after we recorded the last episode. But what ended up happening was it was determined that if you tried to get the PowerPress plugin for WordPress, which is made by Blueberry, by the way, the PowerPress plugin is made by Blueberry. If you tried to get it from the WordPress plugin store, it was locked. You couldn't do that. And so this led to a bit of investigation. And what we ended up finding was a Twitter post that said, if you have Blueberry podcasting plugin in your WordPress installed, deactivate it. Know there is some kind of hack. It has been temporarily also disabled in the WordPress plugin list. It would be nice if Blueberry account posted what is going on. And then we ended up finding out that it basically had been compromised by malware, which ended up causing that malware to end up in affecting other parts of the WordPress install, including the themes. And so this person that we found on Twitter ended up recommending running a certain code to look for these malware files and find them. And then we were like, well, what's going on here? Because this is just one person. So we put a call out ourselves on social media, on Twitter, tagged Blueberry, heard nothing. We know that somebody in our Discord went over to the Blueberry Facebook, posted nothing. And eventually, everything was verified by the fact that WordFence, which is a WordPress security system, I would say plugin, but there's so much more than that. They're a service. They have mailing lists. They have a big impact on the WordPress community. They ended up putting out a post saying, on June 24th, 2024, we became aware of a supply chain attack targeting multiple WordPress plugins hosted on WordPress.org. An attacker was able to successfully compromise 5 WordPress.org accounts where the developers were utilizing credentials previously found in data breaches and commit malicious code to the plugins that would inject new administrative user accounts along with SEO spam and crypto miners whenever the site owner updates the plugin to the latest version. And so basically, the Blueberry PowerPress plugin was included on this. And so what that means is that one of the developer accounts for the PowerPress plugin was compromised, and that was what ended up being able to inject this malicious code. And to sort of further expand on this, there ended up eventually being a post by Mike Dell which is from Blueberry, saying this morning on June 28th, 2024, compromised account was used to submit an unauthorized update to the PowerPress plugin. This was quickly patched and replaced with a new update. We are in the process of reviewing the situation. The plugin has been temporarily delisted as an extra security precaution, but we are currently working with WordPress team to get it reinstated. And just so we're clear on that, 99% sure Blueberry had nothing to do with the delisting. The security precaution is something that is initiated on the WordPress site. So just so we're clear on that, WordPress is the one that takes that security action. And the problem that I take with this phrase is that that doesn't really cut it. If somebody's WordPress was actually affected, it modifies other files. So just waiting for the plugin to be updated, which it now has been, but updating your plugin after the fact might not get rid of that malware. So I feel like that was not really a very robust response comment. And that was from Mike Dell specifically. I actually have not seen anything yet from Blueberry officially. Maybe I missed it after the dust settled. Maybe there was something out there. We never got any response back. And quite honestly, I feel like they mishandled this. So if you're using the Blueberry PowerPress plugin, if you had auto updates on, be aware that you might have updated to a compromised version. And if you're on one that is a little bit old, I think you should be good to update now. I believe that it's all up to date in the WordPress store, but this is huge. A lot of people use the PowerPress plugin for WordPress because it is very robust, and there has not been anything that I've seen that even comes close to the full feature set of PowerPress.
Yeah, and talking around in the circles after the fact, and we've done this before, of, okay, what else is there to replace PowerPress? What other plugin can you throw in on your website that is as versatile and as, I hate to say complete, but as comprehensive as PowerPress is? And there really isn't anything. We talked a few months ago about the fact that Libsyn actually stopped their plugin, and there's just a few others that I know of. So if you're using a non-PowerPress plugin for WordPress, I would like to know what that is, and I would like to compare the feature set, see if it's at least comparable to PowerPress or not, because having a competitor, in my opinion, might drive Blueberry to take care of this a little bit more in the future. And they really should have been more open on it. Now, Mike Dell, in a comment to this post that he made, did say that PowerPress will continue to work on your website if it was installed already. That's a good thing and a bad thing. If you had a previous version that wasn't compromised, it's a good thing, right? If it's the version that is compromised, though, if you had auto updates installed or enabled, which I would have, by the way, because keeping everything current is your best defense, in my opinion, against malicious hacks. And if it was, then what do? Do you disable the plugin? And do you run malware checkers on your PowerPress or on your website plugins? And it's a whole big deal. Are you now compromised because there was malicious code in there? There needs to be some sort of explanation from Blueberry on what the do's or the do nots are, and I have not seen that.
So just keep that in mind for everybody, and I hope that you were not affected. Moving on to the next Better Podnerings, you had something you wanted to talk about. I think you said it was Podcast Bacon. Is that what it is?
Yeah, bacon. No, it's Podcast Beacon. I heard about this on the Buzzsprout podcast, their Buzzcast, I believe it was. I was listening to it as I was driving halfway across the country, and they mentioned that Matthew Passy, who's been on Better Podcasting a long, long time ago, but he's been on Better Podcasting. He actually created this RFID bracelet that will automatically show your podcast on a phone, if I'm remembering correctly. Made a couple of posts on it on x.com. I haven't seen any other information on it. And it basically, if you're trying to tell something about your podcast, instead of going through the motions of having them get into their podcast app, whatever that is, it actually just brings it up automatically. I don't know if it makes them follow or subscribe, depending on the podcast player. I don't know if it does that, but at least it brings it up. And I think this is pretty neat. Say you're at a conference, say San Diego Comic-Con or any other Comic-Con for a geek-like podcast, and you're talking to somebody about something, say, oh yeah, I have podcasts on it. And they go, oh really? I'm looking for one about this. And then you just say, okay, well, just bring your phone close to my bracelet and then you can bring it up. Now, there can be malicious use of this because you could be in line and then just graze across somebody's phones. I'm not exactly 100% sure how this works, but that's something that I'm concerned about, is how can this be maliciously used, not just with podcasts, but anything in general? Do I now have to worry about an RFID making my phone do something that I don't want it to do? So aside from that, though, it is a neat thing. I think it's better than a QR code.
See, I was just going to say, I don't see why it's any better. I love innovation. I'm not downplaying the innovation. I don't see how this is any better than a QR other than the cool factor, which is a legitimate advertising tool, is something unique. I'm not dismissing that.
I am going to refrain from trying to obtain one of these for myself because I just want to see how the dust settles here on whether it's accepted or not. If it's accepted, both from a security standpoint and from just communicating with other people and that sort of thing, then yeah, sure, I'll do it. But if it's considered to be a vulnerability, then no, I don't want. And I think I've been saying RFID, it's an NFC tap is what it is.
Oh, fair enough. In any case, cool innovation. And again, I'm not downplaying the innovation. I want to be clear on that. I just want to know more about the differences and potential benefits between this and a QR code. And if you would like to hear that episode that SP mentioned, episode 73, way back, go to betterpodcasting.com/73. That was when we talked to Matthew Passy at the time of Pod to Pod.
Yep. And then moving on to our next point here, it is something that I saw in Pod News. I hadn't heard about it anywhere else, but I was just catching up on Pod News today, and apparently StreamYard has changed a little bit. Their pricing page, and I tried this in a incognito browser, the pricing page goes to the StreamYard homepage, and the only way to get the pricing information is to then log into an account. Now, I already have a StreamYard account. I use StreamYard for my podcasts that I record outside of Better Podcasting and Gonna Geek, and I'm able to get to the pricing page using that link. If you're not logged in, which means an account with StreamYard, then it won't show you the pricing page. I did try it both ways, and it works both that way. Now, just to remind everybody, StreamYard was acquired on April 9th, this year, and everybody's wondering, is this going to be the start of the downfall? Because they got rid of their developers when they were acquired. So what sort of innovation is going on? And is this change because they don't have developers there upkeeping everything, or is this change deliberate? I don't know either way, but it's interesting to note. And if you are like me and use StreamYard, I would highly recommend that you start exploring other options, whatever those other options are. Full disclosure, we on Better Podcasting and Stephen, you on Gonna Geek, we are using OBS to record, and we're using Video Ninja to connect.
I think this is a good opportunity for us to maybe at some point explore things like the Restream. I believe they have a studio in there, which is similar to how StreamYard was. And there's another one that I just can't think of off the top of my head, which was like a Restream competitor, and I think they did the same thing. It'd be really interesting to see the pros and cons of those. I suspect they're probably not as refined as StreamYard. StreamYard has done a really good job of keeping things simple and easy for people to join, but that would be really interesting to see. I do wonder what the pricing thing's about. I think that's a very good question about the StreamYard. And one of the things that I think is really easy for people to overlook is the fact that things like this use so much in the back end. You got all this video pumping through it. And so what do they do if they are thinking they need to save a buck? Do they start to limit server resources? And then what negative impact might that have? And so I think your wisdom is very sound here.
I have a little bit of experience with it, RIP Blab, and several other services, but I'm still going to use it for now. I am on a beta plan that was not the standard plan. Like, I'm looking at what popped up when I was on my incognito mode. There is a free mode. The basic mode is $25 a month, and then a professional one at $49 a month. That's what's popping up for me for an upgrade on my account. I am paying $10 a month on a beta plan. I know Chris Farrell over on the Gonna Geek show and with All Things Good and Nerdy, we've had him on this podcast before talking about his experiences with Podbean and with Spotify for podcasters. He also is on a different plan. So I don't know what options are showing up for him. This is all individualized, in my opinion, as per where you currently are. And again, you can't even see this unless you're logged in on an account. You can create a free account, but I don't know if you need to throw in a credit card for the free account or not.
I don't think anybody would do that they would make you put a credit card in for a free product that they advertise. Oh, wait, maybe there's more to come on that.
A little tease for later in the show. Matter of fact, Steven, should we foyer over into that area right now?
Yeah, let's do the better ponderings. See, I thought I just switched it up because I screwed it up the first time.
I don't think you screwed it up. I think you were like, let's go. Let's get this done because you were so excited about it.
All right, this is going to be a fun one because it starts with the letter A, and that comes early in the alphabet.
It does. We've had several of our audience members and community members request that we review this service. We did have it on the list, but we were considering dropping it off. But because there was so much of a request for it, we decided to go through with it. So for the Better Podcasting Season 4 penultimate podcast media hosting service review, we're tackling one of the most popular requested podcast media host services for us to review. Acast. There, I finally said it. Acast. Before we closed up the season, we wanted to give Acast a spin to see how it fared against our criteria, since neither of us had any previous experience with the service. Acast was founded in 2013 and is headquartered in Stockholm, Sweden. Acast is currently a public company after 8 years of venture capitalist funding, and it started trading, or it IPO'd in the 2021 timeframe. It was $37 a share and is currently trading at about $16, $17 a share. And it did spend some time early in 2023 at less than half of that value. But then again, the entire podcast industry took a nosedive with the ad apocalypse that occurred within podcasting, or the podcopolis, or whatever they called it back then. I don't know. I don't care. We don't fund through advertisements. So in our previous preparations for this episode, I used one of the two audio podcasts that pod faded after 2017 that the owner allowed to pod fade. And again, this is with the owner's expressed permission. Several times I have asked. He's even inundated it on a podcast himself. He said in a published podcast, I allowed SP to use this show. So yes, it is out there. This is not me stealing a show. Do not try this at home unless you get the owner's expressed permission. Now, I imported the show from Transistor. Remember, we reviewed Transistor about 3 months ago, Steven?
I do remember. I feel like it was just yesterday.
Maybe it was 4 months ago. I don't know. But I imported the show from Transistor to Acast, and I continued the show by uploading a couple of new episodes. Now, there's several different plans. I chose the influencer plan because it took the provided website option and enabled it for the show, and I wanted to check that out. Now, I also was able to share the show with Steven. We'll talk more about that later. Now, Steven, what did you choose?
I chose the free one because I am cheap, even though there's a trial period for the influencer, but it's more fun for me to say I am cheap. And so I decided to do that. But no, all jokes aside, the reason I decided to do that was because this is probably one of the first ones that there's been offerings like this where the free one is like 99% of what we think we would be trying to evaluate as media host. And so I just wanted to see what it was like to actually go in on the free tier for this. And I also, have other website things going on that I didn't need to evaluate that, and I would defer to you on that. But I did do that, and I'll come back to that because there's a little note to be made about the free tier and maybe a credit card.
Yeah, maybe we'll get into, we'll definitely get into several issues there. But using that as a basis, now we'll continue with our typical format of discussing the highlights, the neutral points, and the shortcomings of the Acast podcast media hosting service from the lens of a hobby podcaster.
Let's kick it off with the highlights here. And for the first highlight that we're going to talk about, if you are somebody who is saying, you know what, I want to make sure I have a 301 redirect capability on my media host, meaning that when I want to leave, I can redirect it somewhere else, but I'd really prefer it not to be called the 301 redirect, you're in luck, because Acast does have this. They have a 301 redirect capability, but they refer to it as the show redirection in the settings. So that will apply a 301 redirect should you want to leave Acast down the road.
The import feature worked reasonably well with no issues noted. You can either search for the show in the start of the process by the title or the RSS feed. I believe I did the RSS feed just because I wanted to be precise. And then it worked fine. Similarly, setting up a new podcast was pretty easy with minimal fields required up front, which could be a win for a new podcaster. Steven, you went through that.
Yeah, for sure. For the upload and download capabilities, any limits and whatnot, it's basically unlimited. We say that because there is technically a 900 megabyte per file limit when you go to upload, but that should be very sufficient for most audio podcasts, basically any audio podcast. So it's mostly unlimited.
And it is we'll get to it later, but it's MP3 only. So it's not like 800 megabits of a WAV file or something like that. Now, the mobile interface appears to be Acast's main design criteria. It seemed to work better than the desktop version for both of us. And Acast does provide a capability for auto distribution to several sites, including Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, JioSaavn, Samsung, and the Podcast Index. They also provide links and instructions for manual submissions to Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and excuse me, Google Podcasts. And interestingly enough, there is also an option for an Alexa flash briefing, and I don't even know if that's a thing anymore.
Sounds a little dated to me, which is not surprising. Moving on, if you wanted to talk about money, you can do some sort of money capabilities with the monetization. But, fuck, we were doing so well, and I swore.
And you went over.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, it's the multiple.
Oh. And if you're somebody who is wanting to have multiple users added to your podcast, you can do that because there is the ability to add users at the account level settings. Now, we're not sure exactly how this would translate on a show or an account, but those options are actually in the account settings, not the podcast individual show settings.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not sure if it is applied to the full account, and which I think it is, or if you can toggle on and off per show. I only have one show on my account, so I couldn't test that. It looks like since it's in the account settings versus the show settings, that it is universal for all your shows. So say you have 5 different shows that you're doing with 5 different people and you want them all to have access to their show. They might have access to all 5 shows, not just the one that they're involved with. Have to do a little bit of A and B testing. In the end, I'm just glad that they have multiple accounts available, and that just helps with the production and with the maintenance of the show. Acast does provide a monetization marketplace to play ads on your show. And Acast also, this is a new criteria that we added, does allow an episode to return to draft mode. Now, it's a little bit of a walk to get there. It's in the publish settings under this thing called quote unquote danger zone. So it's less likely to enable by a mistake, which I actually appreciate. I have put some episodes of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Starling Tribune in draft mode mistakenly in the past on Libsyn. So I can understand why you want to make sure you're doing this deliberately. It is a couple of clicks through if you want to do it, and it's not obvious that that is what is in the danger zone until you click danger zone. And if you're really tepid and you see a thing that says danger zone, you probably don't want to go there, even if you want to return a show to draft. So it's a plus and a minus. Several podcast media host service providers have this issue with different things, like the 301 redirect, for example. So I don't know what the answer is, but this is what Acast decided to do.
And hey, if those cons that you're talking about it really are bringing you down, what'll bring you back to putting that in the highlights is the fact that every time you need to put it back to the draft mode, you get to sing yourself a little Kenny Loggins, right? When you go into the danger zone.
Danger zone. Yeah, there you go. Hey, by the way, you can also backdate an episode with Acast. I know because I did it twice. I threw a couple of episodes in and then published them like they were new in 2016. So that is possible with Acast. And it was actually pretty easy because you could shuffle through the years rather than having to click through all of the months to get there. So I did appreciate that.
Also, for the episode details, there is a field to make the episode part of a season. Another new criteria we were looking at when we were scratching our head, seeing one of the media hosts didn't have seasons in the year 2024. So that is there. Now, one of the biggest highlights for Acast is the free features. And when you look at what they offer in the free features, it is the ability to record and edit audio with studio quality, with an asterisk to that. There's an unlimited hosting and downloads of the episodes. There's a distribution, obviously. There's the ability to make money through ads. That is included in the free tier, something that we have not always seen. There are the advanced podcast analytics. Now, there's an asterisk on that. However, it's not like they are scraping them back for the free tier in a very limited fashion like we've seen other free tiers do. And the custom web player. You're not having to pay up a tier like we've seen on a couple other media hosts. If you want to customize the coloring of that embed player, you get that on the free tier.
And that's it for the highlights. We're going to transition into the neutral zone, as we call it. And to start off the neutral zone, we'll do something a bit unusual with the podcast media host services, and we'll talk about the free plan. I know that Steven just talked about the free plan being a bonus, but we'll put the pricing in general, even including the free plan, in the neutral zone. You're like, huh? Why is that? Well, the free plan comes without a website, which might be a requirement for a hobby podcaster that's trying to podcast for free and might not have a website. So we'll throw that in there. Also, the next step up, which is the influencer plan, that does include the website. The influencer plan is listed at $14.99 per month if you pay annually. Okay. If you pay monthly, though, it's $25 a month. That's a bit of a price hike, up from $15 to $25. That's definitely an incentive to pay annually, which a lot of hobby podcasters might not have a couple $100 to throw at it. So that's why a hobby podcaster, from our standpoint, would want that lower per month. But I get why they're doing it. You were just evaluating this on a hobby podcaster criteria. Now, while the feature set is not that bad, this is a bit high for the usual price point. It's not necessarily a shortcoming, but we didn't think it warranted a highlight for this either. And in going through this entire season, we have started to question how much people really need a website with their media host these days. We'd still recommend it, but does that seem like a lot of traditional website offerings by media hosts are going away? There must be a trend happening to cause this. And here is probably the defining factor of why I put this in the neutral zone, and Steven agreed to it. They require a credit card even for the free plan.
I had to enter it. That's odd to me, and I don't like that. But hey, I guess I'll know what happens if I get charges. No, I'm just joking.
So going back and forth on it, it's usually a highlight if they have a free plan that works, but we're just throwing it in the neutral zone. The paid plan is a little bit high, and the free plan requires a credit card to enter in it. So there you go. Also, the podcast statistics are acceptable, and they gain a pass. The insights, as they're called, give you the number of downloads per the last 24 hours, last 7 days, last 30 days, and you can get the same insights per episode. Acast is IAB certified to version 2.1 as of October 1st, 2021, so they were hitting a standard at some point. However, you cannot get specific information, from what I saw at least, on country, device, or where the episode was consumed in terms of where the app was, Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever. So is it enough for a hobby podcaster? A simple number of downloads per episode? Probably. But are these stats stellar enough for a highlight? No, that's why it's in the neutral zone.
Now, moving on with the neutral zone, as mentioned before, there is a provided website if you get the influencer plan. The provided website has a clean look without excessive Acast branding, but there is no integration with podcast directories or social media for that website, so it's a little bare bones. And as a spoiler, there's no way to actually download an episode without using the RSS feed in a browser, which in itself has some problems. But overall, talking website, it is functional enough for it to land itself in the neutral zone as far as the website goes.
There is no included recording, connection, or editing functionality within Acast, but they do offer a connection to Podcastle. And this goes back to the mention of what is included on the free plan. And they do mention that something like this is included on the free plan, but it doesn't exist, at least today. It might have existed in the past. They do have a connection with Podcastle, though. So neutral zone at best, I guess, because it's not really their service, but it's a link service. So we'll just run with it.
It's a little misrepresentative, I think.
Now, at one point in time, they might have not have changed the website. At one point in time, they might have had their own. I don't remember ever hearing about it, but they might have. So we're going to move on, though. For the company Health, we've not seen any concrete warning signs to say it's going to close down anytime soon. However, let's go through a few things. The company went public in 2021 as an IPO on June 17th. Acast was initially valued in the $37 amount per share range and is now in the $16 per share range after hovering around the $6 range for a while. In that time period, since 2021, actually going back further when they were venture capital, they were acquiring Pippa in 2019. They acquired Radio Public in 2021, and they acquired Podchaser in 2022. But Radio Public was announced to close as of March of this year, of 2024, and it has redirected its shows to Podchaser. Now, more will be known about the health of Acast after this recording, because they have a scheduled earnings release date in a few weeks on July 26, 2024. So we'll know more then. I don't think they're in any danger, but I just want to put that caveat out. And then if you're really interested in the health of the company, maybe buying stock. I'm not a stock expert. I'm not trying to say one way or the other, but you will know more after the earnings report on July 26th.
And finally, in the neutral zone, if you're someone who's looking to have a membership base through your podcast, there's no built-in membership program. It is something that they only link to Patreon. So that's something that's there, but it's not an actual service that they're offering either. So there you go. Now let's move on.
So that's it for the neutral zone. Steven, I need you to start the shortcomings.
Oh, these shortcomings. Let's start with the help, because the help was ridiculous, if I'm just going to be transparent about it. In our very limited use of the help, I found that it was unhelpful. There was multiple conflicting articles in just the things that I was searching up. It seemed like every time I would search, I would find conflicting information. Here's an example. When we were looking up the information about the file types that you could put in there, I found that there was one page that said that the file specs had to be, quote, only MP3 files. And then there was another help article where it talked about how when you make an audio file, you should, quote, export the episode audio file as MP3 or M4A as recommended above, end quote. And then for bitrate, there was one article that said Acast recommends 128 to 160 kilobit per second bitrate. And then another page said Acast will re-encode your uploaded files at 128 kilobits per second. And then they go on, and I'm going to call this out specifically because I don't like it. Continuing on, which will not impair the perceived quality for your listeners, end quote. So that very conflicting information. And then for the distribution page had a whole list of places that you could send your podcast to, which was different than what was actually in the main dashboard. So overall, I would say the help is unreliable at best. And honestly, more confusing, I think, is probably the actual use of the help section.
Yeah, and moving on to the next point, this was so much that I actually started to comment a lot about it, and that's the dashboard or the graphical user interface, which I usually let Steven do most of the review there. Overall, I'm going to say this is a failure, and I think Steven agrees with me there. It's just shy of a neutral for us, so it's on the high end of a shortcoming, but it's still a shortcoming. We both experienced slowness in loading page after page. This is probably due to the fact that it is crossing oceans and in Sweden, but it's slow. So maybe that's an indication that at some point in time, it might get slower or not work at all. We both found the text to be small and the design feels modern in some cases and experimental or half-baked in others. It was really kind of weird how it would scroll in one of the formats and then you'd have to go through different next in other formats. It wasn't standardized across, and it also felt bare in some areas. So we decided to throw this in the shortcomings because we literally were scratching our heads over this in our testing of the dashboard behind there. We also, moving on to the next point, there's no Podcasting 2.0 support that we found. So if you're talking about Podcasting 2.0 namespace, you're not going to find it here. There is no social media account linking. It seems to be the normal now with most of the podcast media hosts that we have reviewed. Acast does not allow video episodes to be uploaded, but they say, and I did not experience this, there's a way to convert to video. Maybe if you upload to YouTube, I don't know. I saw that in one article, but I never actually saw it enacted in there. So does not allow video episodes. We generally say it's a shortcoming if a podcast media host does not allow you to upload a video. And in this case, they don't. So it is what it is.
There's also no capability to add or modify ID3 tags. And there's no way to insert dynamic audio outside of the ad marketplace. Again, dynamic audio that we're looking for is mostly if there's something you want to put in that you know you're going to change later, that's not in there. Also, and this is the biggest one, the most important failure that we saw here was the file integrity area, because there was no easy way for us to download the file and find what was actually put out there to the Intersphere after the fact. But when we did end up actually downloading that after the fact through the RSS feed, we found that the file name was changed. And then we had some weird bitrate things going on because SP saw a 80 kilobit per second file re-encoded to 64 kilobits per second. And I uploaded a couple files, one at the recommended 128, maybe recommended, the other at 192. And I saw the file show as being encoded. But then in the end, when I downloaded, I found that they got the same output. Now, there was a download area on the back end side of things, not on the front end. And so what I'm almost wondering is maybe there's a split happening because those files were definitely encoded. I had to wait for them to publish to be encoded. And so it's just a whole bunch of confusion in there about the file integrity, especially given the articles are very different in what they say. You actually experienced a re-encoding and the file names are changed. All of these together is what I would call technically a hot mess.
Slightly. And for full disclosure, I would never produce an episode at 80 kilobits per second. This was literally the original production was done at 80 kilobits per second. And it has become a telltale sign to us on going into a podcast media host provider and seeing if they re-encode or not, because 80 kilobits per second is very unusual. You could just tell that a lot of them want to fix that correction. And I'm like, if I really wanted it at 80 for whatever reason, I want it at 80. If I want it at 320, I want it at 320. You know, it's whatever I want it at. And I just want the option to be able to do it. And this is a hard pass for that. file names, by the way, they weren't just changed, they were mutilated. It was, I don't know, 20 some characters of gobbledygook for everyone that I saw. All right, moving on into our summary. We could see why many of our audience members wanted us to try Acast. The combination of features and pricing on the surface looks like a score to a hobby podcasters. And to be honest, as much as the dashboard was an overall shortcoming, it does deserve credit for being able to be easily navigated by even new podcasters. So that simple approach may entice a few new podcasters. But conversely, on multiple days, it was slow for us. So who the heck knows what's going on with there. From a holistic view, Acast fails our criteria and fails it pretty hard. Aside from the 301 redirect, file integrity is a definite must-have on our criteria, and Acast doesn't give that result for us. Also, the dashboard interface, help, and slow responses all point us not to put Acast on our shortlist for services. I know that probably pains many of you, but it's what it is for our criteria. Plus, services that we would like are not present, such as the Podcasting 2.0 namespace support or dynamic audio insertion. I think those are easy and must have in today's time, and a lot of podcast media host providers choose not to go that path. Overall, there's also a feeling that there might be a sense of neglect with references to things that we assumed used to be, the Alexa flash briefings, for instance. And we'll keep our eyes on Acast, but for now, we're going to say adieu. I say adieu. And as a tease indicator for those out there, since this marks the end of me using this particular Podfaded show for review purposes, it has been shuffled around from podcast media host to podcast media host. It's been shoved in some that I haven't chosen to redirect into because it was so bad. So this podcast has been through a few things. After we record this, I will be importing it into the service that we hope is the final destination and our main recommendation for us, at least, pending next week's review. So if you want a little tidbit of that and you've been following the shows that I have been importing around, you can see where it's at next and you'll be like, oh, okay, that's where they're thinking.
This is where we here at Better Podcasting turn the show over to you as we run through some of your feedback. We call this segment Better Podback.
All right, let's kick off the Better Pod Back, where we started the Better Ponderings, which is about the PowerPress incident, because we wanted to recap our audience's take through all of that. And we had Yakko say, I'm on 11.9.2. I figure I should be okay by disabling auto updates until there's a fix. So I wanted to bring this up because I was glad that he actually was able to get to it before the auto update went through. So clearly he was at the perfect timing, and a great example of why you should be in our Discord over at betterpodcasting.com/Discord, because then you can see these things come up as they happen and not just wait for our next episode of Better Podcasting. You can be part of the community chatter as well. There was also Waffles that said, well, time to, by the way, how do you feel about that? I feel like that was a good impression of it.
I think that was a pretty good impression of Waffles there.
Okay. Sorry, Waffles. I just assumed that's how you said it. He said, well, time to go and change every single post to using the Pinecast player. Now, this is a follow-up to a previous point that we mentioned where Waffles was in the process of trying to take the Pinecast embed player and put it into his website instead of the PowerPress player because it was prettier and it worked nicer. And I think it was a little more functional too. So he went through with this and he did end up following up and saying he got that all done. My whole recovery plan is still ongoing and I am very jealous, Waffles. Very, very jealous.
Indeed. We also had Suncast say a few things, and at the end basically he said, I still cannot believe Mike Dell didn't warn users outside of Facebook or to even suggest users check to see if they're compromised. So yeah, there was some back and forth on that about what's going on in Blueberry and stuff. And you know, Mike Dell actually got in there and made the change and made the corrections. Okay, good on you, Mike. Appreciate that. The communication limited to the Facebook group was that yeah, enough said on that. All right. We also had Suncast say, does anyone else do a video RSS feed? Now, we're not talking about YouTube. We're not talking about Spotify. We're talking about an actual video RSS feed. He goes on to say, I've been wondering more and more lately if RSS feeds for video are all that worth it. I am split on this because on one hand, I'm like, well, video, YouTube. Everybody goes, they think video, they go to YouTube. But YouTube ads are starting to get atrocious if you don't have YouTube Premium, if you haven't been bullied, in my opinion, into YouTube Premium. And who knows about the algorithm of the recommendations and if people are going to be comfortable going forward. I think this, and I'm going to get a little country specific here, I think this election cycle is going to show a lot. We have, unfortunately, in the United States, we have a presidential, or fortunately, whatever. We have a presidential election that's coming up in a few months. I think that's going to affect a lot of the social media platforms and what they recommend and what they don't recommend. That's the algorithm. So you have that going on. A video RSS feed means that you cut all that out and you go directly to your subscriber, your follower with a video. Now, it's data intensive. It is more intensive to consume because you're actually looking at a video, right? You could play it in the background. I've done that before, but if you're downloading a video show, you kind of want to see the video of it, in my opinion. So there is pluses and minuses. There's pros and cons. I'm 50-50 on this right now. If he would have asked that same question 3 months ago, I would have said, nope, don't do it. Just do YouTube. Now, I don't know.
I'm pretty firmly that for a hobby podcaster, it's not worth it because I don't think the infrastructure is there on the podcaster side or the consumer side. I think that this is a dated feature that historically was relevant, but I mentioned that because I don't think that it has been upkept for an average consumer who wants to consume this content. There hasn't been the development that we've seen in things like the audio podcast players, the audio tools that are focused around audio podcasts. And we've seen that time and time again in our media host reviews, where the amount of media hosts that are actually accepting video to be uploaded, not uploaded and converted, uploaded and stored, is very few. So on the podcaster side, I don't see it. I think the end user being able to consume it, I don't see it. And so I think you're more so looking at a potential maybe future proofing if you are to do this. And I think that at this time, it's not worth it because an average hobby podcaster, where are they even going to store that video file? That now they're into web hosting maybe because so many of those media hosts don't store it. So where are they going to put that file? So at this time, I am still pretty firmly that it's not worth it for a hobby podcaster.
For how long though? Because I think we're kind of at the cusp like we were in 2004 when podcasting became a thing with MP3 files. So we're almost there, I think.
I don't, because I think that downloading a file is still very different than streaming technology. And I think we're going to need the infrastructure for direct streaming that video file, because it is a much more intensive thing if you're actually having to download the whole file like people do with MP3s. It's much more intensive than grabbing little sections of video files. So I think we're a while off, especially given the paring back that we've seen on media hosts with some of these extra features. And if they can't even upkeep things like the ability to record, I'm curious where that fits into their plan of being able to store mass amounts of video. I am much more skeptical than you, and I might be wrong, and I'll eat crow if I'm wrong.
I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer at this point. I'm just going back to 2004. And if you remember back in 2004, the way that you had to consume podcasts is you actually had to download the file and you had to be near a computer because nobody had a smartphone back then that was connected to the internet. So you downloaded it on a computer, you would put it into some sort of aggregator. In most people's cases, it was iTunes, and they would link their iPod to it, whatever version iPod that they had, through the 30-pin connector. And then that was it. If there was an update along the way, you'd be SOL until you got back home to your computer or whatever computer that you were using A lot of people back in the day used their work computer for this too, right? And this was also in the days of Napster and, free files for everybody. But it was intensive. You had to download the whole file. I think today would be the same thing. I think we're a couple years away from the devices having enough storage and most people having enough bandwidth through fiber or whatever to be able to use it. Here's the thing, though. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the consumer wants. It's the same thing that have been thrown back into the face of podcast media host service providers saying, oh, no, you can't put podcasts on YouTube. And here I'm saying, yeah, you can put podcasts on YouTube because the consumer says that is where I watch podcasts or that is where I listen to podcasts is on YouTube. It's not what you define it. It's what the consumer defines it. So I think this is the same sort of thing, is that if the consumer wants to download a video file and be able to shortcut the services like YouTube, then that's what's going to define the requirement. It's not us, it's going to be the consumer.
I look forward to seeing where it goes. I still don't see it. I think I still don't see it, but I do look forward to seeing where it goes and maybe eating crow because I hear it tastes wonderful.
Well, we'll see you at episode 600.
Which, speaking of that, I wonder what pre-roll I'll use for episode 600 because Damien the DM came to our Discord and commented on the pre-roll that I used for 300. And he said, and by the way, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about the little clip at the beginning of the podcast that says we're part of the Gonna Geek Network. He commented, better podcasting pre-roll on better podcasting. And I put the inflection in there because I think he was sort of implying that. But I did that because I don't want to play favorites. I can't be seen as playing favorites for such a large episode of Better Podcasting. A lot of our Gonna Geek Network has come through our Better Podcasting connections, and I don't want to make it look like I'm playing favorites. So I put Better Podcasting on Better Podcasting 300 because I wasn't about to reveal those cards, SP.
Hey, that was your choice, your decision. I had no input into it. So if you want to blame some, go ahead, blame Steven. If you want to laud his decision, go ahead and praise him. Whatever you want to do. His head's big enough already. So also we had some follow-up. We had Waffles say, actually, I wasn't trying to get either of you on the show by bringing up ATLA. But now that you mention it, ...
Always trying. And don't worry, Waffles. It's not you, it's us.
It literally is. Yeah. I had wanted to have the time this summer to get on your show because there's actually a lot of preparation I need to do. I want to take this seriously to get on a show and go on. And unfortunately, summer has not been kind to me in my schedule. Let's just put it that way. I've got a lot going on. I've had a lot going on. And this is not a complaint whatsoever, but I really appreciate the offer to be on any podcast, and I will open that up to anybody. If you want me on your show, go ahead, hit me up, and I will strongly think I'll probably do it. But I have to put some limits. I have to make sure I have some caveats because there might be some podcasts that I can't do for work purposes. Anyway, yes, Waffles. I can speak for myself, and we've had conversations offline. I want to come on your show, but it's a question of when.
And I want to echo what you said. I do greatly appreciate the extension of the invitation. So let's just put that out there. And hey, check out Play Comics. Make sure you do that. Check out Play Comics. It is an awesome podcast. And then you can start getting on board with Waffles and harassing us to go on there because, Waffles is going to have this big group of people coming at us with pitchforks and saying, hurry up, make it happen. That's what he's going to do.
That would make me hurry up and make it happen. I don't like the pitchforks. I worked on a farm. I don't like the pitchforks.
And lastly, we have a question that came up during our live stream, because if you didn't know this, we do usually stream when we record this podcast. And we had Liberty Dude ask a follow-up about a comment you made just a few minutes ago.
Liberty Dude questioned us and he said, so next week you reveal which service you choose, recommend, and why? No. We have one more service to review. And after that, we'll do a summary episode and we will go over our short list and say our pros and cons and what we've chosen and what we would recommend for other people as well.
SoundCloud.
May a piece of space junk just drop on your house right now.
Thanks everybody for checking out this show. We greatly appreciate that. If you missed that during the beginning of the show or you missed it last week, we are away next week, okay? So just get that in mind. We won't be here this next week, but you can check out the Discord at betterpodcasting.com/Discord. Lots of awesome podcast talk over there. And go to gonnageek.com. Lots of amazing podcasts over on the Gonna Geek network.
Yeah, next week we will be reviewing Castos. So if you have used Castos or So next time we will be reviewing Castos. If you have any experience with Castos or if you have any comments about Castos, let us know. You got a couple of weeks to get your comments back into us and we will incorporate them on the show. That will be our last podcast media host provider that we review in season 4.
So for episode number 301 of Better Podcasting, I'm Steven saying... it's almost done. You can't send us your media host suggestions because we've only got one left.
And MSP saying thank you everybody for your congratulations on 300. We sincerely appreciate it. We will see everybody next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for checking out another episode of Better Podcasting. You can find the full back catalog of Better Podcasting at betterpodcasting.com. If you're into geeky podcasts, please check out the other podcasts on the Gonna Geek Network at gonnageeknetwork.com. This show was produced and edited by Stephen Jondrew. Voice work was done by L.W. Salinas. Thanks again for listening or watching, and we hope to see you again next week.
Thanks everybody for coming on by. Yay, Johnny, you got that on. That's exciting.
Yeah. So glad. We had the remnants of Beryl. I don't know how you say it. Beryl. Beryl. I just say Beryl. And it sounds like barrel.
Barrel.
Maybe. It sounds like barrel, like roll out the barrel. So anyway, Beryl came through here last night.
We are not rolling out the barrel of fun. That is no fun.
I have been to a polka mass, a Catholic mass in upstate Minnesota. It is, if Catholics ever have a true revival or, a party during their services, polka mass is it, let me tell you. Because literally they roll out the barrel after the mass. Anyway, we had Beryl come through last night and dump some bands of rain. And we had moderately high winds, nothing that had destructive power to it. Might have taken down like tree limbs that were hanging on anyway or something like that, but we didn't have mass power outages or flooding. And I know a lot of people did through Beryl, so I don't want to mitigate what you have been through, including you, Johnny, in particular, because I know you were in the direct path there. But yeah, it was when it comes all the way up to Ohio, and it has happened in the past, and it acts like a hurricane still, it's a bad storm. And that's what this was. So glad that, Johnny, you made it through and you got your power back. And hopefully a lot of other people get their power back pretty soon too. Just to let everyone know, this has happened in the past. 2008 with Hurricane Ike, we were without power up here for a few weeks. That's how bad it was up here in Ohio. It's not that we're not prepared because, we have tornadoes all the time too, kind of similar. But it was that bad of a storm that hit all the way up here. So you can look it up. You can search for it. Hurricane Ike, 2008, Ohio. You can see what the damage was. It was really extensive. It was bad.
He said barrel is the right pronunciation.
So like cat barrel or cat barrel or roll out the barrel.
I assume that this is some form of marketing for Cracker Barrel. Is that
yeah. What a terrible marketing ploy. Let's name a hurricane after our business. Remember where Cracker Barrel came through and took out the whole state? Waffle House is next.
That's what they should do. No, that would be a terrible sponsorship on hurricane names. Well, Johnny, I'm glad that you were able to get by over the last couple days without power. And sincerely, I'm glad you got that back on. That's awesome.
Yeah, this all makes me want to get a solar generator.
SJ, give the audience a wink without laughing. What did I do?
I think he just wants to take a screenshot. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I did
You
both.
can't wink?
I did both eyes.
Yeah. You blinked. You didn't wink.
I know.
Can you wink? Some people can't.
I can, I think.
Okay.
But I don't. I feel like I'm being set up, so I better not.
You're absolutely being set up. Not by me, though.
That's not like a sign? That's not like a sign? I was gonna say we should make A for Acast.
No, not gonna do it.
Yeah, there's probably something bad. Probably something bad. So better not.
I am not that cultured, but that just looks like it has all sorts of problems with it. Me and culture don't get along very well. By the time I figure it out, I'm already wrong.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Yeah, bye.